The Cincinnati Bengals badly need to bounce back on Monday Night Football. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow, he's James Rapien, and we've been your hosts of the Locked On Bengals podcast here since 2016, making it your best, most consistent, one-stop daily shop for all things Cincinnati Bengals, even when the Bengals are desperate. We are here for you, so you never need to be desperate for daily Bengals content. Shout out to all of you who are everydayers. You already know it. Shout out to all of you who make Locked On Bengals your first listen. And James, as the Bengals really need to find a way to look like a competent NFL football team in many ways, not every way, but many ways against the Denver Broncos this week. They're really looking for that Monday night rebound. The same way we saw Jake Browning come off of a terrible debut in 2023 and rebound on Monday Night Football in his second start in 2023. They could use that again this week, but there sounds like there's potentially some change in the air, some talk about personnel changes, and a whole lot that needs to get fixed. As this Bengals coaching staff that in the past has been good at finding adjustments needs to start finding them in a hurry this week before this thing really spirals out of control.
You're exactly right. I think that's the key in the tough part. And I talked about this with Sarah during our crossover of Locked On Broncos. The Broncos are feeling the pressure. They're feeling the heat. There's a lot of pressure on them to deliver at 1-2. And so if you're the Bengals, the big difference between 2 years ago from that Pittsburgh game to the Jacksonville game, Jacksonville was playing for the 1 seed. They would have been the 1 seed had they won on that Monday night. And I was in Jacksonville leading up to that game, and they were just feeling the warm and fuzzies of, oh, Jake Browning's in town. And the vibes certainly feel different around this Denver team. So where do they, and I do think the Bengals are going to play better. It's pretty much impossible to play worse than they did last week. I think you nailed it. The coaching adjustments, finding solutions that are going to work, that are going to jumpstart an offense that has really struggled all season. It wasn't just last week. Obviously, last week was the worst of it, but they have not consistently been able to, or not really at all, not consistently, not even be able to get Chase Brown going. Well, guess what? When Jake Browning's your quarterback, you need Chase Brown to be productive, and you need your stars to be stars. So how do they put them in position to do it against a desperate and tough Broncos team that needs a win at home? And the other thing I was thinking about this matchup, Jake, and just 50,000 foot view, why is Cleveland so tough for Joe Burrow and the Bengals to deal with? They have a good pass rush and they can cover. Well, Denver on paper should be able to do both of those things. They have the best cornerback on the planet. So in a really, really fun and versatile pass rusher in Nick Bonito. So I think that's it's a really tough challenge, no doubt.
A draft crush of mine in Nick Bonito, but it's not just Nick Bonito. It's Nick Bonito and Zach Allen and DJ Jones and Jonathan Cooper and Jonathan Franklin Myers. They go 5 deep that would all probably be starters on this Bengals team. Almost
is that all?
Be starters on this Bengals team. And the Bengals don't draft guys like Nick Bonito. They don't draft the 240-pound edge rusher that can run a circle around your 340-pound offensive tackle. Joe Alt had his issues with Nick Bonito last week. This Denver pass rush got after Justin Herbert last week, and the reason the Chargers were able to pull that one out is because Justin Herbert, being 6'6", 230 or whatever he is, can throw a ball 40 yards to a dot when he's got a guy tackling him. And that's how the Chargers won that game. It's going to be tough for Jake Browning this week. You know, if you're the Bengals, you're looking at this matchup, you're probably thinking about last time these teams played, right? It was Joe Burrow, and it took everything the Bengals had to win that game. It took T. Higgins deciding, you know what, Riley Moss, you don't deserve that name Moss when you're just getting Moss the entire game. And T. Higgins going to town on Riley Moss that entire game, to the point where I remember in the crossover, I did the crossover with Sarah last year. They're talking about, if Riley Moss plays, I feel great about this matchup. And that was the attitude, not just from the Locked On Denver guys, the Locked On Broncos guys. It was the attitude about those covering the team, about the from the team themselves. They really think Riley Moss is a good player, and he is a good player. But if you're the Bengals and you saw the way that you could get after that matchup last year, I have to imagine that's where you're starting. on offense, if you're thinking about matchups that you like, Pat Surtain, great player. Good safeties, good second level, well-coached defense, solid front to back. Less adventurous than the Brian Flores defense. So if you're looking for a reason that you think it might be a little bit more normal this week, is that you're not going to see like 3 pre-snap coverages rolled into a different post-snap coverage this week from Denver. You'll get more traditional disguises and the crazy stuff Brian Flores holds out there. And you're looking at that Riley Moss matchup and trying to take advantage of that. Obviously, you're thinking about protection. You're thinking about the run game. Those are going to be topics for us throughout this week. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit, I guess. We have another day to talk about this game and the matchups. You have a preview on Sunday, but that's probably where you start if you're thinking about matchups. But yeah, I mean, a 1-2 team, 7.5 point favorite at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, who currently lead the AFC North.
Yeah, and it was 7.5. And so for that to move even a little bit on FanDuel this week is interesting. But I do think, just from an optimism standpoint, and maybe I always tend to go that route, but I do think when their backs are against the wall, the Bengals have usually, in the Zac Taylor era, not always, but have usually responded and played well. And this is a really tough spot. I can't emphasize that enough, because you're going to Denver. They have to win this game. Think about it this way. It was very much, and by the way, Washington got it done last year, but the Monday night game last year, when you're going to Cincinnati, if you're Washington, and you're facing an 0-2 Bengals team that is so frustrated and pissed off that it's 0-2. And guess what? Joe Burrow balled out. Jamar Chase balled out, and they were able to take their licks, and Jaden Daniels was that good, and the Commanders handled business. So that's what you're asking the Bengals to do, essentially, and that's tough. Now, is Bo Nix Joe Burrow? Is it completely different there, but I just think from a backs against the wall standpoint, that's what you're dealing with. And so the Bengals could play a lot better and still lose, but regardless, they need to play much better. And I do think that they'll rebound in that department and have a much better showing in Denver.
This is where the judgment really starts for Zac Taylor, for a lot of people, like the more patient people, let's say.
Sure.
This is where that starts. It's like, how do they come back from another September where it's been rough? And this game is still in September, so maybe this one's still rough. Septembers have not been good for this coaching staff. But the thing I said immediately after that game was, it's going to be about how they respond. And it's not like it gets easier. Denver, another great defense. You got Detroit, a team that just handled the Ravens, I thought, pretty impressively in prime time this week. And then you get Green Bay and Micah Parsons, and a team that looks like, outside of their offensive struggles against the Browns, looks like they could be NFC favorites, or at least one of them, certainly contenders. It's not like it gets easier here. And that's why, to me, just like last week, felt like an important opportunity for this team against a backup quarterback, a struggling offense. This week, a struggling quarterback. Bo Nix has the worst PFF grade out of any quarterback that is qualified for enough snaps to be in that conversation. It's similar in that way. It's another offense that you might need some points from your defense this week, James, as the offense is trying to sort things out. Because as we're talking about this offense being better, it's still like, where are the plays coming from? Where are the points coming from? And that's what Zac Taylor needs to figure out. And it should be Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but it's how can you get that going if everything else is as broken as it looked against Minnesota?
Yeah, I think there's, man, and I can't believe week 4. Think about the whole offseason when we're talking about offense versus defense and what you just said over the past 30 seconds. It's wild to think, and it's still accurate. And so I think there's more there. So let's dive into that. And then you mentioned some personnel changes that we certainly got to get to, potential personnel changes. So we'll do that as well coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots, well, they run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives, and that's why maybe you're going to Goodfellas for a slice, Mad Tree for a cold one, Shake Shack, Bark Pour for a glass of wine, the root beer stand, it doesn't matter. Square's got you covered throughout the Queen City. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses across the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood.
We're also brought to you today by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, and as we do with DoorDash, we look back on this week's MVP as we're talking about who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order. Well, you know who delivered for the Bengals, at least in the eyes of the coaching staff on Sunday, and potentially has earned himself some more playing time, is Myles Murphy. That will be one of our topics coming up here in just a few minutes on Locked On Bengals. And like Myles Murphy, perhaps has delivered enough to earn himself some more playing time, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Saturday, just a day away potentially when you're listening to this episode. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday to keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th.
All right, Jake, let's dive into this offense a little bit. You mentioned Myles Murphy. We got to get to that. We got to get to some positional changes. So we're locked and loaded ahead of the weekend here on Locked On Bengals. But you're right. The offense has got to find a way to get going, to put up points. And what a difference a month makes. If you would have told me, yeah, I could this defense, you're talking about this defense getting stops and being the leader, being the reason why they could go to Denver and win, I would have laughed at you a month ago. And yet here we are. They're going to need the defense to step up, have a good showing. And you look at their 2 wins, they forced multiple turnovers, whether it's Jordan Battle, Dax Hill, maybe a Geno Stone interception could happen and rear its head like that. That's what they're going to need kind of moving forward as this offense massages things out, because even if they are better this week, and I expect them to be better, I don't think they're going to have everything figured out in Denver.
Can they run the ball at all? History would say that's a tough battle. And it's an uphill battle when you start as poorly as they have in the run game to figure it out. It's hard for teams to do. It's going to be hard for these Bengals to do it against a Denver team that has guys in the trenches. It's just an uphill battle. So that's why I say, like, where's the offense going to come from? It's a ridiculous question, right? If you think about the Bengals in the preseason, where's the offense going to come from? Well, they have all these weapons. What do you mean, where's the offense going to come from?
Yeah.
You're going to find ways to get the ball to these guys in space. You're going to find ways to let those guys go win one-on-one matchups. But after watching them against Minnesota, it's like you're going to find ways to block the nose tackle and not let him take a free shot at your running back in the backfield. That's the level of football competence that we're talking about with this offense right now. Can you expect that to be better this week? I think so. I think you can expect them to make corrections. I think you can expect that they will have themselves a little bit more buttoned up against a defense that isn't going to be as insane as Brian Flores' defenses tend to be. But I still think it's going to be a struggle, Jay. I mean, this is a good defense. They've got guys, especially in the trenches, that are going to challenge you. So when we're talking about, like, yeah, pick on Riley Moss again. Denver's probably thinking,
Hopefully.
like, yeah, you can try. Good luck. You got to block these guys if you want to take advantage of that matchup. And
yeah,
there's just not much confidence going around right now with blocking anything, whether it's pass blocking, whether it's run blocking, whether it's offensive line, tight ends, running backs, whoever you're talking about with this Bengals team right now.
No doubt. And that's it, is even if you do hold up, it's not like Jamar, you're penciling in Jamar for 200. He's got to deal with, I mean, the best player on Denver's team is the Patrick Surtain. And so that is, it's a tough challenge. It is. But this offense, you're right, they have to be better. And I'm glad you started with the run, because that has to be competent. It just does. It does, because you keep that pass rush at bay a little bit. And 2, and I've said this a few times on the pod, a veteran told me this last week, and sometimes it's just this simple. Chase Brown is one of their best players. They know that. And so if you want to jumpstart your offense, you know what you do? You find a way to get your best players going. And so it does start, and it should start with Jamar and T. But man, oh man, would it be nice if you could see Chase Brown get to, I don't know, 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage before being contacted. Just a couple yards beyond the line of scrimmage before he has to jump cut or pivot or backpedal or do anything that involves the B button or X button or, I mean, it's wild. And so I'm so curious to see what the plan will be, how they do it, and then the personnel part of this as well and how that impacts things. Does it? Will it? Will they be better run blocking wise? And we could get into that because we still have Myles Murphy to get to. Will they be better run blockers if Jalen Rivers is out there and not Dalton Reisner? Is that the answer? I don't know, but sometimes you just say it out loud and that's scary. Hey, 5th rounder, first career start on the road against a great pass rush on Monday Night Football against a 1-2 desperate team. Like there's a lot of layers to that where you're like, I don't know. It might be the right answer, but man, oh man, that doesn't feel great going into it. Put it that way.
I mean, you're talking about a good interior. Zach Allen, DJ Jones, Jonathan Franklin Myers. Those are all guys you would love to have on the Cincinnati Bengals, right? So you're talking about that being your first test. If you have to go out there and start your first starting test, because Jalen Rivers did play last week, and it was less to do with Dalton Reisner's calf than I initially thought. So I'll take the L on that one. It was more performance related than I initially thought, as Reisner seems like he's going to be available this week. But look, if Jalen Rivers can go out there and win the job, James, that's a good thing. That's a good development overall, but he needs to play well. And the whole offensive line needs to play so much better. And like, it's going to be not just playing better, but finding ways to put these guys in situations that they can actually use the tools available to them to the maximum. And maybe that's not wide zone. Maybe the stuff they tried to go back under center, run some wide zone last week, maybe they just don't have the horses, right? They have some guys that are very clearly not suited to running wide zone, especially Orlando Brown, who we like as a pass blocker, but doesn't have that kind of athleticism. That's not why he's here. And so finding the buttons to push, the plays to call, the plays to put into the game plan, the design that you need in the run game. And that extends, especially when you're talking about Chase Brown, to the screen game to me, which they got going last time we saw Jake Browning, needs to be part of this offense, I think, with Jake Browning. How that fits in with the play action stuff you're trying to do a little bit more with Jake Browning. Like, these are all the questions that we need to see answered and executed at such a higher level against the Broncos. And we were kind of robbed of that a little bit. Like, it sounds like an excuse, but they did turn the ball over 5 times against Minnesota. That game was just over. You never got to see the offense find a rhythm. So
over by halftime. Yep.
If they have a chance to do that this week, got to take care of the ball to do that. But that's one way that you can start to see them find some semblance of momentum on offense.
For sure. All of those things need to happen. Punting is okay, by the way. It's going to have to be okay. You know what can't be okay is the turnovers. I mean, the big swings that get the crowd into it.
And getting behind the sticks. Can't live like that.
Sure. And it's just all of it. It all needs to be better on offense. Relying on the defense, though, means relying on Trey Hendrickson and who else pass rush wise. You mentioned Myles Murphy. Let's dive into that a little bit. Plus the latest on Shamar Stewart, his health, which is pretty noteworthy going into a Monday Night Football matchup. We'll do that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety picks and awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathe work, athletes sweat all the details. So does Mazda, with intention to how we craft every single model. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season, especially here in Cincinnati. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
Could get some personnel changes on both sides of the ball this week on offense. Obviously, we're still talking about right guard, which is disappointing to say the least. Annoying. There's a list of words you could use to describe that. But on the defensive side of the ball, where Shamar Stewart sounds unlikely to make it back this week, according to Zac Taylor, there's an opportunity across from Trey Hendrickson. We're also going to have to talk about Logan Wilson and the linebacker rotation that seems to have started in week 3, and we'll keep an eye on how that continues. But a lot of conversation around Myles Murphy in the building this week, James, as I think the play that stands out to me that I keep going back to is Joseph Osai getting blocked by Jalen Naylor and just not setting a firm enough edge on a play that turns into like a 12, 15-yard run for the Minnesota Vikings. That is largely because the guy's able to bounce it outside of Joseph Osai getting blocked by a wide receiver. And so the confidence that you've heard from the Bengals and Myles Murphy, the way he finished an ugly game overall against the Minnesota Vikings, could we see more Myles across from Trey Hendrickson?
You hope so. It's almost like the Jalen Rivers thing, where in different situations, but pressure's on this defense to deliver, and you're going to need Myles. You need him to be a first round pick and not just flash, but be consistent and hold up against this Broncos rushing attack and get some pressure on Bo Nix. And that's where they're at. That's the downside of losing Shamar Stewart, is you knew that it was going to put pressure on Joseph Osai and Myles Murphy and those guys. And maybe Osai does, but the praise for Myles, it gives him an opportunity here to earn more snaps and to potentially deliver like DoorDash on Saturdays, right? So we'll see if he can. How great would that be if we're talking about Myles Murphy on Monday night, early Sunday, or Monday night, early Tuesday morning? Like, man, he was a big factor for this Bengals defense. That would be big.
They need multiple guys to step up on the defensive front. This is a really good Denver offensive line in this game, and moving Trey Hendrickson around, maybe that helps a little bit. Maybe you do get him some matchups with Mike McGlinchey on the other side. Garrett Bowles, Trey Hendrickson is a strength on strength matchup in this game. Maybe they can get him some matchups with Mike McGlinchey at times, who is a solid player, but a better run blocker than pass blocker, at least historically. Not sure if that's the case this year for McGlinchey. It's been a really good pass protecting line from Denver, which really accentuates the Bo Nix problem. And as we keep an eye on Cam Taylor-Britt's health, that's another big one to watch this week. Getting him back could be a boon to the secondary. Sounds like that extra day, getting him healthy for Monday night is possible. As always with hamstrings, you worry about hamstrings and getting guys back on the field too quickly. And you would hate to see that be rushed for Cam Taylor-Britt, but if they can get him back, if he can't be healthy, I think there's a clear step up there in the secondary. But perhaps more interesting than that is what's going on at linebacker. The way that Logan Wilson is getting discussed this week, James. What's your take on the feeling in the building around Logan and having dedicated times in the game where they really wanted to get Barrett Carter on the field because they're excited about Barrett Carter?
Yeah, experimenting, and it's one of two. You need plays. You need some of those splash plays from that linebacker spot. And so who can bring that? Maybe it is Barrett Carter. Maybe he's going to come in and just be that guy that can run and cover and make plays and give them another option. I think Logan's been been fine. Like I know there was some discussions about him preseason and all those things. Like I think he's looked fine. And so I don't know. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill here. I think we're going to see plenty of 55. I think he's going to lead the middle of that defense, but don't be shocked if we see these young linebackers. They invested in them for a reason. They had Barrett Carter round 2 grade. They got him in round 4. And so far he's delivered. And that's why we saw him on the field last week. And I think we'll see him on the field Monday night.
Sounds like it's just more of a Barrett Carter they want to get Barrett Carter on the field.
Sure.
And a way to do that is to have packages for him. Some of that might be packages where he's on the field for Demetrius Knight. The way the Demetrius Knight season is going, it's fine. He doesn't look necessarily like a world beater. He has a couple of plays every week where you're kind of scratching your head a little bit. And some of this also
Ratledge was right there. He was right there, Jake.
Why?
Sorry.
Are we still talking about right guard?
I'm never going to forget it. I'm never going to forget that.
I mean,
because they could have had Barrett and Tate. Anyway, go ahead.
You and me both. They could have had all that. They could have still had Dylan Fairchild. Anyway, we can't be living this way already. Or maybe we're just going to be living this way forever. Part of this linebacker stuff is also going to involve Oren Burks, who continues to have a role on the defense as well. But like when we look ahead to this Denver game, and we'll talk about it more on Sunday when we do our preview show, it feels insane to say on a team with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and the money they put into Mike Gesicki and the picks they've invested on the offensive line and Chase Brown and going out and getting Noah Fant, that we're talking about, man, they could use a defensive touchdown in this one. They could use Charlie Jones returning a punt for a touchdown in this one. They could use some kind of points that don't have to come from the offense And the big thing for this defense for me this week, James, is can they figure out how to start games faster? We've talked about this team's ability to adapt. And honestly, the defense, as they've settled in, has found answers for opposing offenses. The coverages have become more cohesive, I think, as the season's gone on. You're starting to see some of that continuity, some of the effect of the new defensive coordinator starting to add up in some positive ways. But we still need to see more from the pass rush, and we still need to see them stop a team on an opening drive during the scripted part of the game. They've given up 3 touchdowns on 3 drives to opposing opening drives of the game. And against Denver, I don't think that's the way you want to live.
No, it's not. It's the opposite. Take the crowd out of it, get off to a decent start. And yeah, that's spoiler, something we're going to cover for sure on the preview.
Yeah, we'll get to the preview show for you on Sunday here on Locked On Bengals. We will keep an eye on those injuries, keep an eye on the way that some of these guys are working their way back to the field, as some of these guys could help to turn the tide or give the Bengals something that they were missing against Minnesota. Until Sunday, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.